Hey everyone, it is Willow, and that was my dog banging into the tripod again. And this video is going to be addressing some very heavy subject matter. I know I spoke about doing this type of video, and with the holidays coming up, I was going to do this type of video anyway, but last night I accidentally summoned another spirit. So I think that this would be just like the best time to address this. This is going to be a very long video, and the subject matter is going to be very heavy. You know, there's not going to be, you know, a joke thrown in here. It's going to be heavy, dark, a little depressing. I believe myself that it is a very important subject to broach. However, if you, and obviously you know what this video is about because it's in the description, if you feel that hearing spirits who have actually committed the act of suicide and everything that they have experienced is not something you can handle, then I urge you to click out now. But it is very important that if you are in that spot and your mind is going to suicide, it's very important that you hear these spirits. You know, when you relive a memory and you talk about your emotions, it comes forward. You know, if you think about something very funny, you tend to start laughing as you relive it. When you think about something very sad, and do not walk by that tripod again. When you think about something very sad, you start crying. It's because you're reliving that memory. And for these spirits, they are reliving the moments of right after they committed suicide, and the days and the months afterwards. And it's definitely not an easy subject for them to broach, because it's still very painful. But they, as well as I, feel that it is important that people understand what's going to happen. And it is also important for them because then they feel that it wasn't all for nothing. If one person, just one person, changes their mind, they feel it's not for nothing. So before I get into that, I want you to understand I'm not a talking head. I'm not talking from not having any experience myself. Now, this is something a lot of people don't know about me. And the people that do know, they do not know the entire story. It's a story that I have shared bits and pieces with people, but no one has ever heard the entire story. Now, I said I've grown up in a haunted house and that I have been affected by spirits throughout my entire childhood. There was a very specific incident that happened to me when I was 13, and after that, I kind of went on a downhill slide. Now, I grew up in a very old house. It was heated by steam heat radiators. And I grew up in the north. I grew up in Boston. So it got cold, very cold. It was almost a 100-year-old house that I was living in. So the windows were all original and the frames, you know, it got cold. It got drafty. So my bed was right next to the radiator in wintertime. And I did have an electric blanket on my bed. And I woke up suddenly, or at least it felt like I woke up. And I could not move at all. I could not speak, but my body was cold. And I could hear the steam hissing from the radiator, so I knew the heat was working. I could not move my arms to turn on the electric blanket. I couldn't call out to my mother, who was in the next room. And my body just kept getting colder and colder. And I finally found myself outside of my body, looking down on my body. And I thought, oh, well, I guess I'm dead. Okay. So I tried to get out of my room. And when I tried to go through the windows, I was solid. My hands were hitting the panes of glass. Okay, so I'm solid. So I tried to lift up the window frame. The window in the frame. And my hands went right through it. But I was solid touching the window, but my hands were, and I didn't understand that. So I went to the door. And I went to turn the knob. And my hand went through the knob. So I tried to go through it. And again, just like the glass, I could not, I was solid. I couldn't go through it. So I started to panic. I mean, like full-on panic. And I'm like, why can't I leave? Why can't I get out? Why am I stuck? If I'm dead, why am I stuck? Why can't I leave? And I heard this voice say to me, so you will understand. Now, meanwhile, I'm in the midst of a panic attack. I'm not, thinking, who is speaking to me? Is this, the voice of God or whatever? I'm not even thinking that. I'm just thinking, understand what? Fucking what? What am I supposed to fucking understand? And I'm yelling that. I'm like, what? What am I supposed to fucking understand? It's like, if I'm dead, why can't I leave? And the voice just repeated, so you will understand. And before I could think about it, I found myself back in my body, and I could move. And I could breathe again. That's something I forgot to mention. I could feel my heart slowing down. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I could breathe again. And I put my hand out, I turned on the electric blanket, and I could feel my body starting to get warm. And through the years, I've thought about that. Was it an out-of-body experience? Did I really die so that I can understand what it's like to die? I don't have an answer to this day. None of the spirits that are here were there at the time. They can't tell me exactly what it was. But one thing is very clear. I do understand. I understand a lot. And after that, as I said, things started to take a downhill slide for me. I think, and I'm not saying I'm completely blameless in this. Since I was a young child, I knew how to play the game. I knew how to manipulate my mother against my grandmother, and my grandmother against my mother. I was always finding loopholes, trying to manipulate circumstances. But when I was 13, I started to suffer a lot from depression. It got so bad that I didn't even want to leave the house. From the months of September to December, I think I attended school maybe 12 times. So needless to say, I ended up in truancy court, where I ended up mouthing off at the judge, which of course did me no favors. And my mother was at a loss of what to do with me, because even after truancy court, I still wasn't going to school. I was going to be removed from that home. So my mother decided to commit me to a mental hospital. Now, let me tell you about the mental health care system, because this has a lot to do with people contemplating suicide. You hear the horror stories from like the turn of the century. People were wrapped in sheets and thrown in ice cold baths. They were lobotomized. They went through all kinds of inhumane treatment. And you think, well, it can't be that way now. 30 plus years later, I still suffer from PTSD because of what happened to me when I was 13. In the hospital, the very first incident, I was screaming, like teenagers do, at the staff. Just yelling. Wasn't throwing things. Didn't touch anyone. I was just standing in the hallway, screaming at them. About 5 or 6 of them charged me, grabbed me, dragged me down a hallway. Meanwhile, I'm kicking and screaming, flailing. I don't know what they're doing. They bring me into this white room with grates on the window and this huge bed, heavy bed in the middle. They throw me down on the bed, stomach first. They shackle my arms and legs, spread eagle, onto the bed. And they inject me with drugs. I guess it was Thorazine. I don't know what it was. I don't even know what they injected me with to this day. They turned off the lights, closed the door, and left me shackled to this bed for 2 hours. I'm 13 years old. And the only thing I did was yell at someone. By the time they came back and unshackled my hands were blue and they were cold. Because I had lost so much circulation. And I knew right then they would never touch me again. And I managed to escape from a locked mental facility, mind you. Every time they tried to charge me from that, I did escape, and state troopers had to hunt me down. But they did not put their hands on me like that again. But to this day, I can't be in a crowded room. I can't go to sporting or concert events because the noises are too loud and the crowd is too boisterous. And I still don't like people to touch me, which obviously really affects relationships. There were other things that happened there that I'm not going to go into, but they take any sense that you have as a human and they dehumanize you. It's true. You, any claims that you make of abuse tend to get dismissed because you're a crazy person. So, for people that need mental help, it's a very fine line to walk. And I spent the next 3 years of my life until I was 16 in and out of hospitals, short-term facilities, and long-term residential facilities. And I really didn't even want to go home. I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. In all these facilities, I was abused. The relationship with my family absolutely deteriorated. It got so bad with my mother. I had ended up getting hurt by a staff member so bad. I actually, there was so much swelling at the back of my skull that I lost my eyesight for over 24 hours. I was blind, completely blind, for over 24 hours. And my concussion was so severe that I had to stay in the hospital to be monitored. They wouldn't even let me go home. And my mother still wouldn't believe the story that I told her of how I got injured. So, keeping that in mind, it is very hard for people that need to help to want to seek it when you hear stories like that. But I have lost friends and people that I was in these programs with to suicide. And one thing that I understand when it comes to death is that you are allotted a certain period of time. And if you die before that time is supposed to be up, like in a sudden accident, or especially in cases of suicide, that light, that gate, that door, that passage, the person that's going to accompany you, they're not going to be there because it wasn't supposed to be your time. It's why you will find ghosts at murder sites, at suicide locations, at places of tragic accidents. It wasn't their time, and the light never appeared. And so they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. So they stay where they are. And then that brings me to the point of when you commit suicide. And I understand what it's like to feel backed into a corner. That you don't know who you can talk to, and you don't know who you can trust, and you don't know where you could possibly turn for help. Because you're so afraid if you tell somebody your real thoughts, they're going to throw you into that mental hospital, and then you're going to end up face down in a bed, shackled, being injected with drugs. And the stigma is still there. And I knew by relating my history and my story, the work that I do with spirits, people could say, well, she's probably just schizophrenic, she's probably just hearing voices, she's crazy, she's been crazy, that's why she was thrown in a mental hospital. But I know that the people who are my clients that have gotten these spirits from me, they know I'm not just hearing voices, and they know I'm not crazy. They know that this is real. And they understand that what I'm speaking from and about isn't ramblings of a nut. It's something I've been through, and it's something that these spirits have been through. And I know what it's like to feel desperately alone, and you don't know who you can unburden yourself to. And sometimes you try, and it's just too little too late. But no matter how bad you think it is now, it's so much worse if you kill yourself. Because now you can't tell somebody what's going on. You can't tell them how much you are in pain. You don't have that voice anymore. And they can't hear you. And they can't see your pain. And then you couple it with the fact that because it wasn't your time, you can't cross. So then you have to sit there and you have to watch the devastation. You have to watch your family. You have to watch your friends. You have to hear their words and then deal with the aftermath that you have left behind. And you have to deal with it on your own. It's on your own conscience because they can't hear you or see you anymore. And that pain that you felt before is multiplied so much more. And this spirit that I accidentally summoned last night. Now, I don't ask them. Well, I do ask them, do they want to talk about what happened? Do they want to vent and let off steam? And if they tell me no, I leave it at that. It is their life and it is their story to tell. And if they don't want to tell it and they don't want to think about it, I'm not going to press it. I'm not going to cause them that amount of pain. But the spirit that I called last night, his death is very recent. And when I first felt him, I could feel that anxiety and that pain. And I asked him, is his soul okay? And he said, no, it's not. When he first died, he was confused a little bit. In fact, I'm going to get this up so that he can confirm what I'm saying about his emotions. He was confused. He wasn't sure exactly what was going on. There was no light, there was no gate, there was no angels, whatever. And I'm sorry because I'm feeling his emotions and I'm trying to process it into words. He actually kind of started having a panic attack because he didn't understand what he was supposed to do and what to do at that point. So then he was discovered, and he stayed with his body. He didn't know what to do. Then he went. You were with your friend. He was following his friend, and he had a lot of guilt because the friend had to inform other people, and the friend's emotions overwhelmed him. And he said he saw what he did reflected on everyone, and he says I should have known better. He says he said it was fucking stupid and I should have known better. He says, God, I am so sorry. He said it's the fucking dumbest thing I've done, and I've done some fucking stupid shit. He says, I can't change it. he said, God, if I could fucking change it, if I could change everything, he said, I would. But, he was under a lot of pressure. And he was very anxious. He was having trouble sleeping. And, he felt back against the wall, and there were a lot of things hitting him all at once. And he said, I bowed. He said, I bowed under, and he does regret, because he can't tell him that he's sorry. He's sorry that he hurt them, that he said he brought anguish, and he's anguished because of it. And because it's still so fresh with him, it just bubbles up. It's like, it felt like I was starting to have a panic attack because of his emotions. And he says, Jesus Christ, if there's any other way, fucking find it. He said, don't be a fucking moron like I was. He says, I was a fucking dumbass. He was like, I should have done anything else. And his pain is still so fresh. And he has decided to stay here with me, and he says that being here and being with other spirits that have gone through this, and he says it's helping him. It's helping him to come to terms and to heal. But it's going to take him a long time. It's going to take him a real long time. And my other spirit, he committed suicide a while ago. And he's the one that really has been urging me to speak about this. Because he said that if he ever could change what he's done, he would. And I'm going to refer to him as Jay, because he has come through to other people before, and they have been attacked. Terrible things have been said to them. And he doesn't want that from me. He doesn't want to have that negative feedback come back on me, because he believes in what I'm doing for other spirits, and he doesn't want anything to affect what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do to help both spirits and the living. But Jay can look back on everything, and it's not that fresh pain, so it's easier speaking about his experience, which is kind of a respite. Because I could still feel that, like, that tightening that comes with a panic attack. But he said that he would do everything different if he could. and he has seen the pain and the devastation that has been caused. And I'm sorry, I ran out of memory on this camera, so I had to upload everything and then resume recording. I did order another camera, but it arrived and it does not work, so I have to wait for another camera to come in. So I'm hoping I'll be able to do better videos very shortly. But I was talking with Jay before I had to stop recording, and Jay tells me he was there for everything when his friends found him, to the hospital, to his memorial. He said it was hardest on his parents the most, and even after all this time, I can still feel that sadness well up in him. He says, I didn't think about anybody but me. And I didn't think about what would happen after. Not only to them, but to myself. He says, I really wished I had just reached out, said something to somebody. And I had, his birthday had come around earlier this year, and I asked him if he wanted to, you know, do something, if he wanted something special, and he actually kind of got mad at me. And he says, I gave up that life, so I don't have a birthday anymore. He says, I'm dead, I don't have a birthday anymore. And he kind of got angry, but it wasn't at me. He didn't get angry at me. He got angry, well, I take it back. You got angry with me because I was like, are you sure, you know, don't feel that way, but that's why he got angry with me. Because he's like, no. He's like, I'm dead, I don't have a birthday. So even after all this time, there's still pain. That pain will never go away. You're never going to get rid of whatever pain that you have going on now. You're not going to make it better. Not that way. It's not going to get better. It's going to multiply. Because then on top of that pain, you've got the guilt. And you have no way to, unless you come across somebody like me, no one can hear you, no one can see you, they can't feel you. And then what makes it worse is that when you come upon somebody like me that can feel your pain, then they start to feel they start to feel your pain and the guilt and everything, and you're like, oh God, now I'm inflicting it on her, and then you feel so much worse on top of that. But you can't help it. Because just every molecule that makes up you has that pain and has that anxiety and the anger and the regret. And trust me, I am not a fan of the mental health system. I say if anybody ever wants to take me back there, they're going to have to take me back there over my dead body. Literally. Literally. They're going to have to drag me back over my dead body. And here's the funny thing. After everything I went through, they labeled me, and this is back in the early 90s, okay? when the problem for mental health was to throw pills at kids for ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, the answer was to throw pills down a kid's throat. I was on almost every type of antidepressant that they could think of. One almost ended up killing me. It put me into a coma. They had to flush out my system. And after that, I told my mother, I'm never taking it again. They're not making me, because if they do, I will find a lawyer to sue. With or without your consent. You're not putting another pill down my throat, because that time you almost killed me. She didn't press it, and they sure as hell didn't press it at the facility I was at, because they knew when I said I would sue them, I wasn't joking. And they were lucky they didn't get sued then, because their doctor had prescribed, they were switching me on this medication, that medication. They kept switching my medications, and they almost killed me. To this day, I don't take any medications. Well, I take it, I mean, I have some physical problems, so I take stuff for arthritis. I take stuff, I actually have a bleeding ulcer. So I take medications for that, because I can't even afford to take the time or afford the surgery to close up a bleeding ulcer. So I have to take medication. If I forget to take it, it starts bleeding again. So, I mean, I take medication for that, but I don't take any mood-altering medications. And you know what? I'm not depressed anymore. Shock. A lot of it has to do with environment. And before I end this video, there was one thing that lives to me to this day that was good, that came out of that whole mess. Now, one thing that I learned very quickly is that despite HIPAA laws, the psychiatrist would go back to my mother and tell her everything I had said. And when we would have a fight, my mother would throw it back in my face. So I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm not going to say a fucking thing to anybody. Fuck you. I'll keep it to myself. And then you won't know what the fuck is going on. Which is self-defeating, but, you know, again, it comes back to who can you fucking trust, you know? So anyway, I had, in the hospital 5 days a week, you had mandated 1-hour therapy sessions. Well, the mandate was that I had to show up and be in that room for an hour. The mandate wasn't that I had to say a fucking thing. So every day I would come in there, I would pick up a magazine, and I would sit there and I would read for 1 hour. As soon as the time was up, threw the magazine down, walked out. And one day, after about like maybe a week and a half of this, the psychiatrist said, you know, she says, I get paid for you to be here. She says, if you don't want to talk to me, she says, I get paid either way. She says, and now I have a free hour to do all my paperwork so I can get out of here earlier. She said, so it's great for me. She said, but you're sitting there in your own misery. And in this scenario, the only one that's miserable is you. She says, the hospital is getting money from your insurance company. I'm getting money from your insurance company. She's like, I get paid and I can leave early. And you're still sitting there miserable. And of course, in the infinite wisdom of a teenager, I just went, psst, and just didn't even look up. I don't know if she noticed, but the pages of that magazine never turned that day. Because I sat there and I was thinking, and I was like, you know what? She's fucking right. This is bullshit. So I had a choice. I could talk to her, which wasn't going to happen because I knew that fucking trap. Or I could say, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck you people. This is my fucking life. And I'm going to do what I fucking want. And after that day, I started changing. Because when I looked in the mirror, I wasn't happy with who I was. And I hated to be inside my skin. I hated who I was. In school, I was bullied a lot, so I became the class clown and ended up in trouble a lot. Wasn't happy at home, wasn't happy at school, wasn't happy in my own skin. So I thought to myself, what do I have to do to make myself happy? Well, first of all, my first order of business was to adopt the attitude of, fuck you people, I'ma do me. And that has had varied results over the years. To this day, I still have the fuck you people, I'm gonna do me attitude. Needless to say, it didn't do me any good in my marriage, and it doesn't do well in relationships. But I don't need to be married, and I don't need relationships. I haven't dated in I don't know how long. It's been years at this point. And I don't feel the need of it either. I don't need anyone else to fulfill me, and you don't either. But you have to do what you have to do to find that one spot of happiness, just that one spot. And then you have to work to expand that spot. So if you don't know what it is that makes you happy, you need to find what it is. And take it from me, you can't sit on your ass and think that that spot of happiness is going to come to you. If it makes you happy to sit and watch comedy shows, then that's your happy spot. Do it. And then once you're done, you're like, all right, I did this. I got happy. Now I need to brace myself for the ugly. And it's not an easy road. I've lost people along the way. I will say I ended up turning myself into a bit of a hard ass. And it hasn't worked out well for me sometimes. But at the end of the day, you have to look at yourself. You'd be like, you know what? I'm okay with what I did today. I'm okay with my life today. And my opinion may not be popular to other people around me. But I can look at that mirror and I could be like, I like the person whose skin I'm in. I can live with that person. Because that's what it boils down to. Suicide is saying you can't live with the person that you are. Because the pressure is too much and you feel like you're not living up to yourself, or you're not living up to what other people expect of you. At the end of the day, this is your life. And it's hard sometimes to say no to people. And of course, if you end up being a complete bitch like me, it's real easy to say no to people. Be like, no, do it yourself. But that was not something that came naturally to me. And some of my friends think it's kind of funny sometimes. But it has gotten me into some trouble. And I will say my life was definitely not an easy one. Even after all that, man, I had some hard times. And I've had complete strangers just come out of nowhere and help me. And I took that hand when they extended it to give me that help. And I never forget it. I turn around and I help people whenever I can. Because you never know when it's going to be you that's going to need that hand. And don't slap it away. Don't slap it away. Because I've been proud. Trust me, I am an Irish woman, and we are like proud. We do for ourselves or we do without. But there have been times I've needed that, and I had to like swallow my pride down. And I took the help. But when I was able to, I repaid the help that I got, either to that person or to somebody else that needed it. And just think, you may think that you're worthless, that nothing you do is going to make a difference. And I've been there. Not too long ago, I was sitting here, you know, I have health problems, and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm a waste of space. What do I contribute to this world? What do I add to this world? What good am I doing for anyone? And then all this started with the spirits. And now I understand. By helping the dead, I can help the living. And if seeing this video helps just one person, hearing my story, hearing what I've been through, and seeing I came out on the other side and I'm okay. And if they say to themselves, well, if she can do it, I can do it. I can do this. I have to do this. Then I guess I'm not a waste of space after all. And that's what you got to remember. Because someday, you come out on the other side of it, you find somebody that was in the same place that you were, and you're able to help them, and you are not a waste of space. So, I hope this video is able to help somebody to understand not only that you are definitely not alone. There are people that have suffered, and sometimes they have suffered worse. And if this is what you are dead set on doing, be aware of the consequences. Because they are very real. They are very painful. There are other ways of dealing. And I am not a great big fan of the mental health network, obviously. But that is not your only resource. It's not. There are support groups. There are hotlines. There are other resources that you can go to in case you're just like, well, I definitely don't want to say this because I don't want to end up in a mental hospital. You don't have to. There are other resources and support groups, and those are all listed in the description. So even if this isn't you, but you know somebody that might benefit from hearing this, listening to this video, then forward it to them so that it might help make a difference. And I think that is it for me, and I know the guys are satisfied at this point. So I think I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to edit this, and I am going to post this. And I really, really hope that this helps make a difference to somebody. Because then I will not be a waste of space. And neither will you. So, in case I don't get to have like another heart-to-heart video, take care of yourself and have a happy holiday season.